Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Laura with Connect My Brain. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. We have been going over all kinds of different labels and diagnoses when it comes to kiddos. And I want to add a few of the adults into this equation because you guys go through stuff too, right? Or we go through stuff too. And I'm kind of mixing this time also with bringing some parents and some adults that are utilizing services here at Connect My Brain so that you can get a firsthand understanding of what we do and how it's different and how we complement with other providers in order to put that patient in the middle and be part of the journey in bringing resolution. And that's really how I'm going to focus on adult attention issues is by describing what complementary and alternative care really is, and then obviously why are you struggling with attention, and then what are our alternative therapies that maybe somebody could think about when it comes to being an adult and having trouble with paying attention. What's so interesting is the majority of this practice is children, but we definitely have adults that come here as well. And attention is one of the common things that people will come in for. Depression, anxiety, sleep, memory, those are some of the other ones which I'll be highlighting over the next few weeks, and how neurofeedback can really be a viable tool in order to add this to your journey. And that's kind of what we're talking about when we look at alternative care. You're looking at things that are not mainstream. They're typically not thought of by allopathic medicine. And in saying allopathic medicine, that is the traditional medical community. And while they have approaches, that's what's in their tool bag. People like me, I'm a chiropractor with a very long list of credentials after my name because I really like incorporating other therapies and modalities in conjunction of utilizing chiropractic care. And I'll even tie in, why would somebody consider chiropractic care when they're struggling with attention? So I'll even tie that piece into it. But the majority of adults that come to Connect My Brain that are struggling with attention really have looked back at their life and feel like it's actually something that they've struggled with their whole life. And one of the things that I like to do with adults is, regardless of why you're here, try to remember the very first time that you felt that way. That's going to help you put in a place in time, when did this really happen? And if it was something that you can remember back in your childhood, then I really want you to go listen to the podcast on attention struggles in children, because I think it's really important. Most people want to know, why am I struggling? Why do I go through what I go through? And we need to put it in a place of time. And if you struggled with attention, or possibly hyperactivity, or even impulsivity, and you can remember either somebody telling you you were like this as a child, or you can remember it yourself, you've got to put that developmental picture into the equation. And I like to refer to that as this domino progression. When somebody builds dominoes and they make these elaborate fortresses. And then they can go with one push of a finger, and then all the dominoes go flying down. That's the analogy that I like to use when it comes to talking about the developmental sequence. It is like a set of dominoes. It's meant to build on each other. It's meant to move in a sequence. Think of the curves and the down slopes and around the corner. All of these things are part of our journey in wiring up the brain. And when we talk about children, we look at it from the bottom up. You could even say the body up, because the body is what is turning on the brain. You come into this world fully formed, but you're not fully functioning, and you're in your brain stem. And in order to move along, you've got to build it. So when we look at adults, and if they can remember, then we want to try to figure out, well, what was missing? What happened? I can remember one adult in particular, very emotionally connected to the struggles that she was experiencing, not only as an adult, but could vividly remember them as a child, and remembered how hard it was to learn, how hard it was to concentrate, how hard it was to do what she would say her peers could do. And think about carrying that with you all of these years, and the wear and tear on our body, the amount of stress pulling this, how hard you have to work at something. And sometimes even going a complete different direction, only because you have this internal picture that you can't. That part is so powerful on us. And I will do a podcast. I will commit to doing a podcast when I get done with a few more of the adult categories. I want to do one that really focuses on renewing your mind. This is the tagline to my business: to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If we carry stuff with us, it's not just adult attention struggles, but it's the impact of what you've carried with you on your confidence, your self-esteem, your ability to know what you're really meant to be in this world. And that to me it's so damaging to carry these limiting thoughts about yourself. And then what you speak about yourself, what you speak over yourself. Your brain is listening. So if you've been struggling with attention since you were a kid, or even if it has just something that you're struggling with today, I really encourage you to seek support. Now, what kind of support? Maybe you've already tried medication. Medication is definitely one avenue, and I am never trying to speak against, but rather trying to help people understand that when we use medication, and the principal medication used in attention issues is stimulant medication. And when we use this, well, you're stimulating the brain, but you're doing it through a chemical. And that can have many adverse effects on your brain. And I've talked in detail about those particular outcomes in previous podcasts, but one of the main things that they have found over long periods of time is that it's impacting the communication down at the synapse where there's a lot of chemical exchange. And when people try to stop taking it, what they're discovering personally is that it's really impacted their ability to remember things. So, a neat part of doing the work I do with neurofeedback is I've learned neurofeedback will actually help the medication work better. And there are lots of situations that come in here where people are on medication for a variety of reasons, but they are looking to resolve the issue so that they could do something different. And this is where the idea of complementary and alternative healthcare comes into the picture. So, complementary means that it's going to work in alignment with maybe some of the traditional approaches. So, that would be, for instance, somebody on medication and they want to try neurofeedback in order to help the different regions of the brain that are involved in attention. And one of the very first things that I'm going to talk about with them, if you're choosing to come to this practice and you're under the care of a provider who has written you a prescription for medication, I want you to tell them that you are doing neurofeedback. This way, we can be monitoring this individual in both directions. And what can end up happening is the brain is going to get to a place where it's functioning better, but it then begins to feel as though it doesn't know who to pay attention to. Do I pay attention to the medication or do I pay attention to the neurofeedback? And this is when there needs to be an adjustment primarily to the medication because the brain is working better. But that part's not in my realm. And that's why I would love for that communication to be open. So, this is the idea of complementary care, where alternative care might be evaluated as instead of going with medication, I think I want to try a more holistic approach, meaning a more body approach. Let's look at my chemistry. Let's look at my vitamins and minerals. Let's look at my food. I was speaking to somebody today who was telling me that they had gotten a recommendation to take dairy out of their child's diet. And this child was behind in their language development. And the very next day, the child said their first word. So, this is how impactful food can literally be on our bodies. Okay. You may want to jump right into neurofeedback and see what's going on in your brain and where are these different hubs and modules that are supposed to be communicating together, where might they be out of sync? So that would be approaching a traditional healthcare situation like attention deficit, which also falls under the category of mental health disorders. And some people don't want to go under that type of a canopy. And I believe that your health is your decision because you ultimately have to live with those outcomes, regardless of what it is that you choose to do for yourself or for your child. So, when we look at CAM, that's typically the abbreviation of complementary and alternative medicine. They refer to it as CAM. And today, there are more than 38% of adults and 15% of children that utilize CAM services. So this is a number that continues to grow. I believe those are just some statistic that I can find for validation purposes. I would believe from being in practice for 28 years, I 28 years, and I'm definitely a CAM provider, and I have seen an increase far greater than that statistical reference when it comes to people looking for another approach. So it's a big number. All right, so let's kind of dive into why might an adult have trouble paying attention. We've already substantiated that it could have been something that's been there forever. But I want to bring in another idea with incredible perspectives that I think are really valuable in trying to make sense of all the information that's coming into us and why are we struggling to pay attention. And one of the areas that is really very big and very far reaching is the use of technology. And we all know it's here to stay. I know you're going to use it. I know you're not going to come away from it. I'm using it right now to communicate with you. But I can tell you for myself, I am a big proponent for keeping children as far away from it as possible for so many reasons. Lots of podcasts, lots of previous podcasts done. Be sure and listen to them because they're in a developmental window. And that is the biggest difference between the adult person and the child. Now, again, if you've struggled from the beginning, to me, you're just compounding the problem. But for a child, they're having so many different problems because they didn't get their foundation set. As an adult, if you have just begun to realize that you're struggling with attention, you at least got your foundation established. I just can't even begin to explain how important that is. You know, when I sit down to write out my notes for doing my podcasts, I do all kinds of searches. I've really noticed there's a real difference in the information that's really available. Number one, you've got to know how to search. You've also got to know what platforms that you can go on to really find out other perspectives besides mainstream. Even the internet is being dominated by mainstream perspective only. And you've got to know how to search because most of the stuff that I was looking at was saying how people with attention issues should utilize these devices in order to help them stay organized. And I'm going, oh my gosh, we're just making the problem worse. But if you do more alternative searches, you can get researched information that's really pinpointing what is happening in the brain of people as it relates to the utilization of devices. One very interesting piece was looking at a type of radiograph, I would say, or a diagnostic tool. It's called a dense tensor imaging that looks at the white matter of the brain. So you have two matters. You have gray matter, you have white matter. Gray matter is where we process. And white matter, deep within the tissue, is this beautiful structure of feathery like projections that go everywhere in the brain. And this is how all these hubs and modules are interconnected. It's also a very unique developmental structure because it's going to have a unique blueprint for every individual based on what was going on when you were developing. So while we all have the same stuff, we had different journeys. And this is one of the most influential parts of how we get wired. So we have to appreciate these unique blueprints and then how they're going to conduct like an orchestra of information. And when it comes to attention, it is a sensory experience. And sensory means, how is all this information coming into you? Is it coming in visually? Is it coming in from your ears? Is it coming in through the utilization of writing, which, as we're talking about devices, that unique neuron is being replaced with tapping, and tapping a keyboard, tapping a phone. And it's estimated that with the use of phones and devices, that a person is literally going to touch the phone device 2,176 times each day. Now, the most direct evidence about technology and its impact on the brain has been associated with cortical activity. So that's our brain, okay? The top of the brain. And so when you're tapping, you're literally utilizing the tactile receptors in your fingertip. And if you look up the word homunculus, it literally is going to show you a sensory motor map of where all your body parts are mapped out. So when you go and you implement over 2,000 tactile touches, that is providing feedback to your brain. And this is how we work. We are feedback mechanisms. When you're cold, you get a message that says, get a blanket. Or if you're hot, let's get into a tank top. If you're hungry, you're going to get some food. If you're worried about time, you're going to feel even the revved upness inside of your body. It's a feedback mechanism all the time. So by placing over 2,000 repetitions from your finger to your brain, it's saying, hey, sensory motor cortex, feel this, feel this, feel this. And what's happening is we're getting a change to the organization of the brain. Just like if I wanted to teach somebody how to tie their shoes, we would literally go through the practice of tying our shoes. And as a child, you typically go one bunny ear to another bunny ear, cross it over and pull tight. And you're squeezing those laces between your index and your thumb. And that too was putting down organizational information into your sensory motor cortex, where today you and I have done that so many times. I don't know about you, but I don't even look when I tie my shoes anymore. I literally could be looking over to my right and tying my shoe and do it perfectly, because that repetition has been laid down. Anything you do, How about earbuds in the ears? You know, if there's ever anything that I have seen that is crazier than that, is people utilizing Wi-Fi earbuds in their ears, closest to their brain all day long, just so that they don't have to have a wire and they can keep connected to those phones or devices. I would seriously rethink what I was putting next to my brain, completely compounded by the amount of Wi-Fi that exists all around us. And if you don't think that this is playing a part, go do some research. How many people today have buzzing in their ears, especially since the 5G towers? You can't keep going with these advances and not think that there is a cost on human function. And there is more research being written about it today than ever before. This tapping alone is reshaping the cortical sensory region, and it may be at the expense of other motor functions. So if I'm doing this tapping more than I'm going out and playing pickleball, there's going to be a cost ratio that will potentially reshape the ability for me to do what I want to do with my body. And this may not be something as fun as pickleball, which I absolutely love, but it could be just your stability. It could be your endurance physically, which is then going to trigger a cascade of change to the human physiology of your body. These functional changes to the brain may affect attention because you're dividing yourself up on multiple online platforms, which what you're practicing is what you're going to think is multitasking. And you might have a recipe open on one page, looking up somebody's phone number on another, and then going and ordering something online, and you are divided. And therefore, you are not practicing or maintaining sustained concentration on a single task. Years ago, I found this great brain show on one of the online programs. And I loved it because it addressed this idea of multitasking. I saw this too as considered to be a symptom of attention deficit, is that you may have trouble multitasking. Well, let me put some truth to that. We're not designed to multitask. No one can multitask. What that would mean is that I'm going to listen to a podcast, write out my personal podcast, answer the phone, and maybe check out my email. Or even more dangerous, I'm going to be on my phone texting while I'm driving my car, especially in Atlanta, Georgia, when I'm sure this goes on in other places, but this place is like, if you're not fully engaged, you're going to get sideswiped so easily because people they drive in and out so crazy. But the idea is I cannot be fully engaged in the task that I'm doing, which operating heavy machinery like a car is so serious. Why would I think that diverting my attention would be a positive step. Think about all the states that have literally gone to hands-free driving because there's been numerous accidents. You can't do 10 things at once. You can do one thing at once. So right now, regardless of everything else that's going on, I'm doing this podcast. There is nothing else going on in my environment but doing my podcast with you. This is going to bring my entire attention. It's going to allow me to bring my thoughts together as I prepared my podcast notes on what I wanted to truly build on. This is the art of paying attention. This is an important part because if you're going to get the ability to pay attention, you must first become aware of what it feels like to pay attention. I am 100% engaged in this process with you right now. I know what it physically feels like to be in an attentive state. And I also know what it feels like when there's too many things going on at one time. And it's not comfortable for me. I really prefer to be fully engaged. And I do believe most of the people that have ever worked for me have always said this about working with me. When she's in the office and she's with her patients, do not bother her. She has tunnel vision. She is one-on-one with them. And I believe this is what has made me the practitioner that I am today and have sustained a practice of 28 years that continues to grow and thrive and engulf so many different areas and people, because being tuned into them allows me to know exactly what it is that we've got to focus on. And then it allows me to create that management plan that's going to help me deliver a focused plan that's going to bring about resolution. And that is truly my goal. And when you set a goal, you have to then have the long-term part and the short-term part. The long-term part is I want you to have resolution. The short-term part are all the detailed steps that are going to help us reach that end result. And we have to do it together. This is not me with a magic wand. This is you and me partnering in a snapshot of time, going through what we need to go through in order to make the changes that are going to bring resolution in your life. So that's just the concept of attention and how devices are altering the organization of our brain in order to do that. But it goes even farther. When we are influenced by so many different directions, like it's very easy to be on your computer and have 15 different tabs opened at the top, or overly relying on devices, you're impacting your ability to remember, which would also interfere with attention, right? So how many out there don't even think about directions anymore and only put the directions up on their phone? You don't have to think. You can just follow the little cues. And wow, we can make it really fun. We can give our little map a voice, and we can pick different voices. I can remember the first time that I heard Santa Claus during the month of December giving directions. I did think it was so much fun. So don't get me wrong. I love having fun. But I'm 62 years old. I want to thrive. I want to be here for a long, long, long time. So I'm going to practice remembering. I don't always rely on my phone. And I literally, going into new areas, I'm going to look for landmarks and I'll say them out loud. Okay, so when I'm on my way back, I'm going to be looking for that particular place, and that will tell me where I turned right. Now I'm going to turn left. When I'm speaking, I'm actually getting my own brain to hear my voice, and it will help my brain remember because it's in there. Once you say it, it's in there. So that's going to help my brain remember that when I'm returning back to the original destination, I know the cues that I'm looking for. If we are on the computer, have you noticed that now there is this little AI support that is anticipating what you're going to say in your sentence? And so it's already populating it. Oh, yeah, that's the word. So I'll just hit the tab button and go. I completely ignore that because I'm not thinking. I'm not going back and rereading my sentence to make sure that's really the word I want to say, not the influence of something else. Because over time, if that's what you're going to practice, that is what you're going to rely on. What about autocorrect on your phones? Always anticipating, even when you're trying to maybe write something out that isn't a typical word. Do you actually go back and correct it, or do you just go, oh, that was autocorrect? So again, we're not looking at the product that we are creating. We are not paying attention to what we write, what we're trying to say, which now you're going to practice, which is going to create a problem with storing information, recalling information, and literally giving you the ability to expand your memory storage. Again, that is going to influence our ability to pay attention. What about this familiar social gathering scenario that we see today? How many times have you been out at a restaurant and the only thing that you saw was people with their faces down looking at their phones, or kids being set up with a tablet on an easel? Nobody's even talking anymore. The human connection. People are texting and working and maybe, feeling bored. So let me go see what's going on over here or over there. Meanwhile, there's a whole host of people sitting around at a table together. What is this doing to the social fabric of our community? So when we look at attention from CMB's perspective, yes, we are mechanical, we are chemical, we are brain. But what I want to highlight in the podcast is, what are we finding in the brain? What we can find by utilizing a brain map is to show us where there's chaos in the brain, where those hubs and modules are either underpowered or overpowered. So you have a host of networks in your brain. You have an attention network. You have a executive function network. You have all types of networks that are synchronized to work together, to communicate, to bring forth the function that you want your brain to be able to do. And not only do you need those communications to work properly, but you also need, like the default mode network, to be able to disengage that would allow you to then engage into what you want to engage with. You also have to be able to filter out all the other sensory inputs that are going on. So, for example, there were other people in the office just a few minutes ago doing work on another floor. I had to be able to push that away so that I could bring my focus here. So it's not only about paying attention to what you want to pay attention to, but you have to be able to push the other noise, distraction away. You have to learn how to do that. And you have to help your brain remember how to do that so that you can literally pay attention. So here at Connect My Brain, we do a brain map that allows us to look at the synchronization of those networks. And we can find out if they're overpowered or underpowered. And we can literally design neurofeedback programs that are going to allow you to practice attention. How do we do that? We do that through neurofeedback therapy. When you are here, you are literally going to have something on your head. It might be an individual lead, it might be a cap. And you're going to have this connection to the software. We're going to have you enjoy watching something very calm because we don't want to practice attention in a dysregulated state. By the way, some of these programs on Netflix have a tendency to put people, but something that is calm and enjoyable. Then we're going to place filters over what you are watching. There's a visual filter and there's an auditory filter. And when your brain gets into the designated state of practice that has been determined personally for you, you will begin to see a change on the screen. So it's going to go from dark to light. And when it's in the brightest state, that is your brain actually practicing attention. And you begin to feel it and connect with it. There's also a sound that will be synchronized to the brightness. So as you learn this therapy, you will begin to realize, oh, it's going dark. Okay, what am I doing? Let me breathe. Let me get further engaged into my program. You're going to begin to connect with it so that you can actively participate. But really, neurofeedback is at a subconscious level. And it's really designed for you not to try to muscle it. It's about letting go of the chaotic patterns and allow your subconscious mind to figure it out. You will get real-time data when you're done. I will be able to show you the percent of time that you are actually engaged. If we're doing one particular program called a Z-score, I'll be able to tell you the percent of Z-scores that you are actually engaged with. And the great part about neurofeedback, it's not 100% effort that's necessary to begin to move that pendulum in the other direction. In fact, it's 50% or less that you begin to make subtle changes. But first, you have to become aware of what it really means to pay attention, what it really feels like to pay attention. And this is such an innovative therapy that it is safe, it is easy to use, it's easy to understand, and it is making changes for people everywhere. If you would like some additional information about neurofeedback, please write to me on the Contact Us tab on the website, connectmybrain.com. I will personally get back with you. It always helps if you can let me know a day or time that you're actually available, and I will do my very best to get back to you at that time. sometimes it feels like we have to go back and forth a few times just to make that connection. So I'm always trying to see these little details. What could make that connection happen faster? Tell me your schedule. That will really help. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this information today. Please share it with someone. I'd love to thank my podcast manager, Marcy. She has been there for me, and we're getting this information out there. And then my web support person, Natasha, who has recently helped me really give the website a boost. So be sure and go and look at all of the new information available to our community and to the world. I hope you have a great day and be blessed.